Welcome, everybody. Glad to see you all piling in. Good to see you today. Seeing some familiar faces. Good to see you again. We're going to give about 45 seconds to 60 seconds to let the room fill up. It looks like people are just streaming in, so we'll get right to it. Glad that you could all take some time out of your day to join us today. Andrew, what do you think? Think we should get started? Got about 50 in the room?
Yeah, I think now's a good time. Let's do it.
All right, well, welcome everybody to the Touchpoint webinar. Database Cleanliness is next to Database Godliness. We are glad that you're here, like I said. My name is Brian Bishop. I'm the Director of Solutions for Touchpoint, which just is a fancy word for sales. So if you have any questions before, after, during the seminar, want to talk more, I'm your guy. Been with the company a couple of years, followed Andrew into the company. I live just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, married 30 years, have 2 grown kids. I've got a grandson and another on the way, and that's probably the most interesting thing about me. So Andrew, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. My name is Andrew Triplett. I am the Director of Consulting here at Touchpoint Software. It is my job to come alongside our different church partners, helping them out either in the conversion process as they're getting ramped up with Touchpoint, or after they've been with Touchpoint for some time and just need some refresher or have some initiatives that they want to put in place. I come alongside, and I help them establish those goals and reach those goals using Touchpoint. On the personal side of things, I'm here in Memphis, Tennessee. One of our church partners is Bellevue Baptist Church, and they are nice enough to lend me this beautiful space to work, this beautiful office. And outside of that, I am a father with 2 kids. I've been married, just celebrated my 11-year wedding anniversary. And again, like Brian said, that is the most important and interesting thing about me.
Thanks, Andrew. So let's talk about some housekeeping items, things that always come up. So we want you to be rest assured that we are recording this session, and it will be available to all participants and folks that couldn't make it, because we know time gets busy, within about 24 hours of this session. So we just want you to know we will send this along, because oftentimes there will be concepts or things discussed that you want to push to other people on your team, and we welcome that. We want everybody to have access to this knowledge base and to this information. If you have any questions, feel free to enter them in the Zoom Q&A, which you're seeing circled down there. And then we are planning to reserve about the final 10 minutes of this webinar for questions and answers. So please, as you go, think about questions and go ahead and populate them there in the Q&A. All right? So this is one of the most popular topics that we've discussed in various forms. And as we run through this agenda, you see what kind of we're going to be talking about: records and groups and some audit processes and some maintenance. We just want you to know that if you're in this webinar today because you're struggling in this area, you're not alone. This is a big obstacle for many churches, and we'd like to help you through that. And so along with that, or to pair with that, I'd like to ask Andrew, what is the biggest question that we hope to answer today?
All right, so the number one question that we want to answer is, why is dirty data bad for discipleship? And like Brian said, this is a presentation that we've done a couple times, and every time we do it, we get a great response. And I think it has something to do with, one, not a lot of churches are doing a great job in this arena, and 2, it comes down to this question: why is dirty data bad for discipleship? You're seeing some areas lacking because you can't accomplish your goals because you don't have the data to get there. Bad data in your database can handicap good discipleship, because if we don't know the people in our database, then we don't really know all the people that we're reaching. Okay, and so that's really the crux of what's at stake here. So when we talk about database cleanliness is next to database godliness, obviously that's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but we are serious that it is extremely important to make sure that we have good, clean data, and that we have processes in place to get that data. And that's primarily what we're going to be talking about today. Now, we do a lot of conversions here at Touchpoint. We're converting people from from other databases. And some of the most common things that we hear in that conversion process is complaints about current data. Okay, and in some cases, the difficulty in getting good data actually precipitated the decision to change. So we hear these comments all the time. Our data is old and we don't have a way of getting new good information. We have too many duplicate records. So many of our emails bounce because apparently there's bad email data in there. We don't know if we're reaching the right people with the right message because we don't, again, going back to my point a moment ago, we don't know who these people are really from a data perspective. We might know them in the real world, but we don't know them from a virtual data-driven perspective. So
Yeah.
how do we get dirty data? Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, no, so for those of you that don't know, I spent a lot of years in pastoral ministry, used 3 different church management systems, which yes, means I went through 3 database conversions. So I appreciate your prayers of support. But I know this all too well on how data gets dirty, because with every shift, every coming year, every new cycle of ministry, things just tend to get jumbled up. So let's talk about how data gets dirty. Number one, let's talk about bad processes, all right? Are you a part of a church that maybe has the telephone game? Hey, by the way, I heard that Bobby Sue has this going on in their life, or they have a new phone number, and I'll text it to you and I'll email it and you send it to a staff member. They get busy, but they're supposed to update the system or remember that they were supposed to have updated the system. Or some people are keeping everything on pen and paper. Hey, if you have a change of address, put it on paper, put it in the offertory as it goes by. Those might get forgotten. They might get thrown away. God forbid they get stuck into the finance office desk. 3 months later, people are asking, why don't I have my mail? Why didn't you update my record? Or the old telephone game, which is, somebody tells something one thing, but then as it gets down to the person who actually has to do the work, it's a completely different scenario. They don't know what the real story was. And then they have to backtrack and go all the way back to the member to ask, right? And then silos, some churches are using multiple church management systems, if you can imagine that, because one person on staff that's leading a department really likes brand A, but then somebody else really likes brand B, but the church uses brand C, and never together are they. So you've got data that's distributed all over the church, and especially one of the worst things that people do is they load it onto a spreadsheet. Well, I'm a small group leader. I keep everything on a spreadsheet and I communicate with my people that way. And the data just gets dirty. Your sheet as a small group leader may be updated, but when the church is trying to communicate effectively and completely to the entire membership body or the entire enrollment, it makes it very, very difficult when that data has never been synced up. Or you may be dealing with bottlenecks. Okay, with Touchpoint, members are allowed to update their own information, and you may say, oh my gosh, we would never. Well, I understand the reasons for that. Let me tell you some reasons why we allow that. Number one, they're the first point of contact. They know their address. They know their phone number. They know if they want SMS. They know what their email address is. They know if they change jobs and want to update that in the system. And what happens is we have bottlenecks that happen at the church because there's the one person that maybe answers the phone that has to write that down and then either have to pass that off to somebody to handle or handle it themselves. But that one person who's usually answering the phone is also the person who's dealing with pastoral staff and lay leaders and doing hospital visitation setup, and they have a million things going on, right? We know that in church world, there is no absolute job description. It is whatever needs to be done at the time it needs to be done. So we want to help you eliminate some of those bottlenecks for today's session. And then we also want to talk about organizational problems, just confusion. I don't really know who's supposed to manage that data. We don't really have a point person. Do we have a team? I don't know. How do I do it? I guess I'll go do it myself. So a lot of these frustrations, not only have I lived in my own personal ministry life, but we also hear day in and day out, and we want to help you through those issues, right? So let's get to the good stuff. Let's talk about what a clean record looks like. So we're going to be talking about the records and groups. So in Touchpoint, you may know that as a people record, and a group we call an organization. That's just what we call them. But you may call them groups or tags or affiliations or involvements or whatever it is. So just understand we're talking about records and groups. We're really talking about people and the stuff going on, the great ministry that's happening in all forms at your church. All right. So we want to talk about what clean records look like. Your records should have first and last name. They should have addresses. They should have emails, phone numbers, date of births, right? They should have some type of membership status, not just added. In Touchpoint, that's how everybody comes into the system brand new. They come in as just added, and then it's the responsibility of the team to manage that data. That's one way we try to make it easy to go and find how things need to be cleaned up right from day one. And then we also want clean groups, okay? When you look at your database, how many of your groups are inactive, right? If they're inactive, is it clean? Are they classes that maybe were 10 years ago, or boards that don't even exist anymore, or committees that haven't met in 7 years? Do they necessarily need to still be intact in there? And then are they categorized, right? Do you have your programs and your divisions and everything outlined, or is it just sort of thrown into the pot of this is our church and we're just going to try and figure it out, right? Let me just tell you, there is a better way, all right? Andrew, let's talk about a database audit.
Yes. So let's talk about an audit. So one of my responsibilities, as I said, I'm a database consultant here at Touchpoint, and so one of the things that I do when entering into a new commitment with the church, where we're sitting down and trying to figure some of these things out, first thing I do is a database audit. And so where I start is with just a very, very high level basic search of the people records to see and make sure that we're taking care of the people that we should know best, aka our members. So I'm going to walk through that in detail in just a moment, but high level, I'm talking about members. I'm going to compare that to marital status. I'm going to compare that to gender, and I'm going to look at their names, make sure that their names are all good and clean. And then I'm going to flip over and talk about organizations. In Touchpoint, we call this organizations. Like Brian said a moment ago, this is kind of that concept of groups within other systems. So I take a look at total count. I look at active versus inactive groups, making sure that that's all clean. So with that, let's actually go ahead and dive in and do that. So I have just a little dummy database pulled up. This is a database that we use for testing sometimes. So when I sit down with the church, first thing I do is I go to people and then basic search. Now I know that we have a lot of people on our call today, so we're represented today by a lot of different systems. I'm going to try and keep this as high level as possible. I am working within Touchpoint, of course, but hopefully you can recreate these concepts within whatever system you are working in today. All right. So start with people search. Now, right off the bat, I come here. I'm going to go ahead and clear this so that I'm just seeing all data, 100% of data. And right off the bat, I'm seeing some interesting things just in this list. I'm seeing some nonsensical characters here. Clearly someone was doing a test there, so we can get that information out there. I'm seeing question marks in here. I really don't like seeing question marks. But all churches kind of have their own standard by which data gets in the database. And we're going to talk about some of those standards a little bit later on. But general rule of thumb that I like to see churches abide by is first name, last name, and at least one piece of contact information, whether that's a phone number or an email address, cell phone number, whatever it is, so that we can actually be reaching out to that person. So, if you look up one day and you have a bunch of first name question mark, last name Smith, and then no contact information, well, that doesn't do you a lot of good. So I like to start there, looking for that. We have a saying here at Touchpoint: database should reflect reality. Whatever is in reality should be in your database, and vice versa. So when I see a name that has parentheses in it, well, that no one that I know of has parentheses in their name. So we should have a facility to support that. So that might be like a middle name or a goes by name. In this case, I'm seeing Anthony and then Tony. Tony probably is the goes by name if I had to guess. And then I'm seeing someone else here, Whitworth Enterprises. That's likely a business. So if your database has the ability to convert those over to businesses so that you're kind of keeping your people records over here and then businesses, there's a lot of good reasons to have a business in your database, and hopefully you can designate it that way. In Touchpoint, one thing that we do is, if say Whitworth Enterprises here, for example, they were to donate some stock or donate a gift in kind, we don't want to associate that to the individual, because again, it needs to reflect reality. We want to associate that to the business. Okay, So that's right off the bat. I can clean up some pieces of information, some piece of data right from here. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter by member. So I'll sit down with the church. I'll say, okay, here's a list of your members. We have 2,747 individuals in your database that are regarded as a member. Is that accurate? If no, why is that not accurate? What's going on here? And then we can kind of make a plan and go from there. But let's say, for the sake of today's demonstration, that is an accurate number. That's what we're looking for. Okay, well, great. So these members are, in theory, this is our flock. These are the people that we should know best. You know, I'm not so worried about if we don't have every bit of information about someone who's not a member of our church. You know, that's not the end of the world. I still like having that data here. We'll talk a little bit later on about segmentation and how we can reach out to those people. I still want their data there, but if we don't have perfect information on them, not as big of a deal. But in theory, if these are the people that we should know the best, we should probably know something very basic like their gender, right? So I'm going to take a look. I'm going to compare member to gender. This church is doing a fantastic job. They have 0 records here of members that they don't know their gender. However, let's do the same exercise now for marital status. Again, if these are the people that we are ministering to on a daily basis, stands to reason we should probably know their marital status. In this case, we have 13 people. This would be very easy to send this list around the staff, and just real quickly, you know, surely someone on the staff knows these people, is in contact with these people. There's only 13 of them, and just knock out, yes, we know the marital status of these individuals. All right, so that's a very simple exercise that each one of you can do today to start down this path of getting good, clean data. And then, you know, any other statuses, sub-statuses, in Touchpoint, we have a concept of status flags. So we allow our users, our churches, to create kind of these, what we call status flags, that are pieces of information that are crucial or critical to them. So if I have one in here, like maybe an active individual, you know, how well do I know these folks? All right. So looks like none of my members are active individuals, whatever that might mean for this church. And we can dive into that and kind of determine, hey, you know, are we defining active individual correctly, especially as it pertains to member, so on and so forth. So a ton of information can be gleaned just from you doing this exercise.
Yeah, Andrew, how about just added? Because that's you know, every church has an entry point for people that are brand new to their database. So if you were to run just added, now again, this is all dummy data, so we don't know what's going to really come back from
this
here.
This is going to be ugly.
This could be very, very ugly. So you may say, hey, that looks like my database. I hope it doesn't. But if it does, then this gives you a great place to start. After you've done the member and all the people that you know, I think this is a really great place to then dig in and really see, okay, where do we have some gray areas that we either need to teach our people how to manage around, or, you know, how can we avoid this in the future? So if this was my church, I'd say, my goodness, I got 2,700 members and 1,300 of them, or 1,300 non-members that are just added. I have something not happening right in my processes.
Right. This is the fastest way to reveal to yourself and to your team that there's not enough processes in place to vet these records and to get that data into the system in a manner that's clean. So, you know, we won't get too in the weeds today about that process in Touchpoint, but we are going to talk on a broad scale about how we like to see our churches sort of set that up. Okay. All right. So now let's kind of look at the other side of the coin. Brian talked about records and groups. In Touchpoint, again, that is a concept called organizations. So please, for all of you on the call today that are not Touchpoint customers or Touchpoint church partners, that is okay. Just pretend like the word organization here is group. Now, the first thing that I like to do on this page is I point out to the church, okay, you have 1,554 groups that are currently active in your database. That's not necessarily bad, not necessarily good. It's just, is that appropriate? So for a church that might be running 5,000 people on a Sunday morning, and they have only about 100 groups, well then maybe we're underutilizing groups. Maybe we need to find ways to categorize people a little bit better, get them into some kind of a group that's meeting on a weekly basis, or whatever the case may be. But on the flip side of that, if you are running 250 on a Sunday and you have 3,000 groups in your database, well, maybe you're overutilizing groups. And maybe some of those things could have been reports. They could have been what we at Touchpoint call searches, things of that nature. So again, not a real right or wrong, just maybe indicative of some processes that we can take a look at. All right. So I see here we have 1,554 groups. I like to take a look at inactives. We do need to be doing a good job of, once a group is over, like if this is a discipleship group that only runs for a set amount of time and then it's over, we need to deactivate that group. All right, so someone needs to be taking the time. I can see in this database, someone is doing a good job of making sure that they are end-of-lifing those or shutting those down, deactivating them. All right. And then I like to take a look at categorization. Every database should have some methodology for programs and divisions. Or excuse me, I said programs and divisions, I meant categorization. So up here at the top, Touchpoint, we utilize terminology like program and division. That's kind of like if you imagine a file cabinet, you have the file cabinet is the program, the drawer is the division, and the file within that drawer is the organization. That's kind of our take on it. Every system has something a little bit different, but I do like to drill into these, take a look at them. If we have just a gigantic list, like in this database, you know, maybe we're overutilizing programs. Maybe we can cut some of those out to clean that up a little bit. Same goes for divisions, and then I'll take a look at schedules. Obviously, schedules are getting a little unwieldy in this database, so we've overutilized schedules for one reason or another in this database. How can we clean that up? Okay. And then finally, taking a look at online registration types. Are we making good use of online registrations? Are those being set up properly to get data into the database? Because registrations and online giving, I'll tell you, are two of the best ways of getting good, fresh data into the database. And I will expound on that in just a moment. So I hope that was helpful. That, again, was a really high level view at how I approach an audit when I'm working with a church.
All right, now a little bit of audience participation time. Raise your virtual hand if you believe that you are doing a good job on this, or if your church is doing a good job on this. Let's see. Oh, I'm seeing lots of
hands going up.
Good. Excellent.
All right, for context, we're up to about 15, we're teetering between 15 and 16 raised hands out of 65 attendees.
All right. So good for the ones that raised their hand, and an opportunity for improvement for those that didn't raise their hand. And I appreciate your honesty. We've written down all the names of the people that did not raise their hands, and no, I'm teasing. We don't do that. We just wanted to give you a way to give a little bit of feedback. So excellent. All right. So let's talk about teamwork. All right. Let's talk about some of the things that we've looked at and how we might better manage what we do. Okay. So we need to ask the question first and foremost is who owns the data? Whose job is it to make sure that the database stays clean? If you say everyone's job, that's okay, but that still doesn't leave one person with the ultimate responsibility to simply open the database to an open search and just click run to see the health of the organization. So somebody should have that area of expertise. They don't necessarily have to, that's all they do, but somebody should be looking at that. And that could be an XP or an XP's assistant, or a database admin if you have one, or somebody on the finance team, or the person at the front, or however you have that going. Now in Touchpoint, we have an internal term we use, which is called new people manager. And so what we ask churches large and small is just to give people a responsibility of a new people manager and say, hey, it's your job to every week look at the just addeds, right? And then build or put them into the pipeline or the processes that best suit their needs based on where they came from and what they're doing. And we're going to talk about entry points a little bit more in a minute, so I'm not going to focus on that. But you may have individual ministries that do that. So you may say to your small group ministry, hey, one of you or whoever the leader of all small groups is, you got to make sure that your leaders are keeping the data clean. right? That you're constantly looking for duplicates or for bad data or for characters that don't match. And, any modern database is going to have the ability to, bounce new addresses off of a USPS database. If yours doesn't do that, it's time to come out of 1994. Because every modern database really does that really, really well. And that just takes one less thing out. Because when you think about the amount of money that churches are spending to send out contribution statements or to send out the newsletters or letters from the pastor or whatever the case may be, that's money wasted when it just gets bounced back and returned to you, right? So there's an immediate cost savings to the church for actual ministry when you take care of this data, all right? And then you need to look at, how do you create new record? What are the processes for creating new records, right? Do you have a process that will allow you to create a new record for your email campaigns, or if someone calls in, or even if you're using a text service, can you have people update their record via text or through a mobile app? These are modern ways now that will allow you to do that, rather than when I was in ministry in the 90s, where I would say, hey, if you have a new address, put it on the envelope and check the box that this is a new address, or give a call to the church office and we'll go ahead and adjust that for you. Again, back to the bottlenecks, right? If you have a new person sorting on Sunday afternoon or Monday, whenever that is, and they don't realize that they're supposed to be looking for check marks, it may go missing for months and months. And we just want to help you. Again, please understand, what we're trying to do is help you make better disciples and disciple people in a more effective way. And so that's really our goal, is to say, hey, if we'll focus on this little tiny thing of making sure that your data is clean, then hopefully the end goal for you is that you have more time and resources and passion to do what God's called you to do, which is to make disciples. Okay. And so we want to talk a little bit about, the power in the palm of your hand. Right now, if you have a mobile app at your church, awesome. All right. If you have a mobile app at your church that doesn't allow for congregants to actually interact with the database, then that could be problematic. All right. I go to a fairly large church that has an app that's not necessarily tied right to their system. And so when I update my personal information in the mobile app, it's only updating my payment processor. It doesn't update my record in the database. So I still have to call and ask. So one little teaser, if you want a system where it's all included, I would encourage you to just, stick around a little bit or email me. Because our mobile app is truly bidirectional. It's tied right into the database. You make a change in the database, in the mobile app, it affects the database. You can deep link right into it. So that's just a fancy word for the church can send out an email to someone that already knows them. So when they click on that email, maybe it's for a registration for Christmas Eve services, or to make a gift, or to challenge a pledge, or anything like that, when they click that link, it deep links them back into the system and automatically knows them, causing them to feel known. And hey, I don't have to go know my username and password. It already did that for me. So there are modern ways that you can put the power of a good database into the hands of your people. But the ultimate goal is to keep those records clean. All right.
One point I'd like to add here, and we are going to be addressing, I do see questions that are coming in, and we are going to be addressing questions at the end, but I do want to go ahead, and since we're talking about this right now, I do want to point out one. Linnea Peter asked, how do we easily have folks update their own info via text? And the purpose of today's presentation is not to promote or push everyone to Touchpoint, but I do want to address some good ways for people to do that. So you do have the ability to send a text from your database, and most databases are doing that these days. We have the concept, and Brian's showing it right there on the screen, of a deep link. Now, if you put a deep link into your text message and someone taps on that or clicks on that from their mobile device, it's going to open your mobile app right there on your mobile device, because of course you're already there. So it takes you into the mobile device. Since we know who the individual is based on their phone number, we can go ahead and link them to their record by virtue of that phone number. They're logged right in. We can even send them, we can guide them. In fact, the the example we're showing there on the screen, you see mychurch.app.tpsdb.co/profile, kind of long, /information. Now that information portion is the key, because that tells the individual to go to the information page where they can update their own information. It's a really great, really modern way of getting good, clean data in the database. Cool.
Yeah, and Lindsay, I am going to answer your question at the end on deleting people from orgs or the database. So just bear with us. We will answer that question. And so just hang on just a little bit of time. Okay.
All right. So new people manager. Now this is a very touchpoint centric term, but this is what we call the person or persons at a church that sort of owns the data. It's their responsibility to, when that data comes in, to take a look. And so we are curious. We are curious to find out. So we have a quick poll. So we're going to fire up this poll. Is your database admin full-time, part-time, or volunteer? So we're curious. We want to know here. So you should be seeing a poll pop up on your screen right now. I'm going to pause for just a second so that everyone has an opportunity to take this. All right, so I think we're getting some results on that. Let's see here, where are my results?
Hey, Andrew, if you're not able to see the results, I'm going to hit share.
Oh, there it is. All right, so it looks like about 55% of the folks on the call today do have full-time, someone whose job is full-time, devoted to that. Then we have another 30% part-time, 9% volunteer, and 9% no, we don't currently have someone who's fully devoted to the database. Brian, what do you make of those numbers?
It sounds about right. You know, I know of a lot of churches that you know, they've large churches, but they've got people that are pulled in separate directions. So you know, the question that I get asked when we're onboarding a church is, can someone do this part-time of a church of X, 900 people, 1,000 people, 1,500 people? Can someone do this full-time, or am I going to need somebody full-time? And the answer that I usually give them is that part-time is going to be fine in order for someone to make the most of it, as long as the church is committed to allowing them to do their job, number one, because they're not always there, right, to ring the bell or sound an alarm when something's gone wrong. So if the church has made the commitment to, this is the database that we're going to use, this is how we want it managed, and this is the person that's going to manage that 15, 10 hours, 20 hours a week, however it is, as long as that person has that backing and has clear processes from leadership on what are the expectations, then they're going to be just fine. Yeah, and that's even true for volunteers. As long as volunteers have the backing of you know, leadership, then it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I tend to agree that is a common question that we get asked from time to time is, hey, do we need full-time, part-time? How's that going to work? And I do advocate, especially for larger churches, kind of you hit that 1,500 threshold, somewhere in that range. It is nice to have someone who's wholly devoted to the database, to understanding processes. At Touchpoint, we move pretty quickly, and I know a lot of our counterparts out there in the market move quickly as well. With there's so much cool innovation going on in our market right now. So having someone who is dedicated to taking a look and watching that innovation and then implementing it at the church is a really, really nice thing to have. But at the same time, you know, if you don't have the resources to allocate for just one person to take that on, it is certainly something that can be shared among teams, or as long as the processes and communication is there, it can be kind of a part-time process. All right. So let's talk about the new people manager for just a second. Again, a lot of you on this call might call that person something a little bit different. But this person is kind of managing, hey, how are the records created? How are they coming into the database? I mentioned two earlier, registrations and giving. Those are two of the primary ways that you're going to see new data getting into the database. And so our encouragement is to be aware of that, to be aware of what registrations are currently open, so that you can be watching for those new records coming in. Understanding that a lot of people, their first interaction with your church is not through attendance, but actually through giving. Studies have shown that a lot of times people will do what is seen the least, or what they perceive to be seen the least, and in a lot of cases, that's giving. So, they might not want to show up to a small group on Sunday morning and kind of put themselves out there, because as humans, we are afraid of rejection, and it's kind of a silly thing that we do, that we don't want to go into that small group. So rather than go to a small group, we'll kind of start what we think is small with a gift, and just kind of give a little bit behind the scenes. That way I'm not interacting with people, but understand that a lot of your records are coming in the database through giving. And then you will have some, a smaller percentage, that are going to come in through attendance, typically. So these are brand new guests. So again, it's critical that we have a process in place that are looking for those people who are attending for the first time. So you're reaching out to them and making them feel welcome. Since again, like I said, as humans, we are afraid of rejection, making them feel immediately as though they have not been rejected. They have in fact been accepted, and that we love them and we want to have them come back. And then finally, contacts. If you have the ability within your system to write a note about someone, you had an interaction with them, maybe ran into someone in the supermarket, and you had a nice, meaningful conversation that needs to be recorded in the database, that is another great way to get data into the database via contact. And what I want to see all of our churches doing is to set some kind of, what we call a touch point, an entry point on each of these individuals. So what an entry point can do for you is it can help you understand how records are getting into the database. So you can in fact test me on everything I just said, as far as how's information, how is data getting in the database? Is it coming in via giving? Is it coming in via attendance? And then getting a little bit more granular with things like special events. Unfortunately, in the age of COVID, we're not doing as many special events these days, but one day we will. We're going to get back to it. And wouldn't it be nice to know, hey, we added 50 new records to our database when we did this men's ministry special event over here. Well, that resonated really well. But then this other event that was designed for outreach, we actually didn't create any new records from that outreach event. So apparently that event wasn't as effective as we were hoping it would be. So we can revamp that. We can take a look at what we're doing there. All right. Another crucial question that I ask all of our churches, and this is where I feel some tension in the room whenever I bring this up, is who's got the time? Who's got the time? And what I mean by that is, when it comes to registration, when it comes to giving, who has the time to sit and enter the information? Are we going to ask the giver or the registrant to use their time to enter the information? Or are we going to take the time as a staff to enter that information? Okay, here's what I mean. So a lot of you, if I had to guess, I'd say about 50% of the folks on the call today have decided not to use their church database for their primary registration tool. And the reason that you made that decision was because something along the lines of, it was too clunky. People had to enter too much information. It was too hard it took too long for people to register. Now, at Touchpoint, we have some really, really cool, innovative solutions for that. But there is some truth to that, because people have to indicate who they are, because in a third-party tool, like some of those that you'll see out there on the market, all they do is registrations, all they do is giving. It's just data. It doesn't matter who the individual is, because they don't have to match it to a record. That's not true with the database. And I'm speaking for Touchpoint, I'm speaking for all of our counterparts in the industry. In a database, it matters who the individual is. We have to make sure that the person who's giving, that gift is attributed to the appropriate contact, or the appropriate record within the database. Same is true for registration. So what ends up happening is you have situations where people do have to enter a little bit more information. Okay. Now, again, we have some really innovative ways around that, and Brian can maybe talk to that later, or maybe even another time if you want to come back. We can talk through that. But we also have the ability to limit or to relax those requirements. So we're not asking as many questions. We might ask first and last name, sure, but we're not going to ask for address. We're not going to ask for date of birth. We're not going to ask for phone number, that sort of thing. So we relax those requirements to speed up the registration process. What ends up happening in that scenario is that you do create more duplicates. Now, a lot of systems will err on the side of caution and go ahead and create that duplicate record because, again, like I said, we want to make sure that we're attributing giving and registrations to the right person. But I'm going to say something here on this next slide that always gets a reaction. Whenever I say it, people kind of are kind of a little bit taken back. So this is going to be the most controversial thing you will hear today. Not likely, but controversial for church software. Duplicate records are good. Duplicate records are good. And so I sit down with a lot of churches and I try and kind of shift their thinking a little bit on duplicate records, right? Duplicate records, I hear it's common refrain. Oh, it takes time. We got to sit down. We got to merge those records, and we of course have merging tools within Touchpoint, as I'm sure you do in whatever your current database is. But here's why I think duplicate records are good: is because you get free data. You get free, up-to-date data that you didn't have. So the reason a duplicate record was created in the first place was, well, someone put in their first and last name and an email address, but the email address didn't match the record. Well, that's because you didn't have an up-to-date email address. And now you do, because you have a new duplicate record. These are also ministry opportunities, right? We should be looking for reasons to call our members, to call people who are new to our church or registering for events at our church. And this gives us a perfect excuse to call them and say, hey, it looks like you registered for our event. You have some information on here that doesn't match what we currently have. So I just want to confirm that with you. And while we're talking, hey, how are things going? Are you plugged into a life group at your church? Are you plugged into a group? How can we help you? So having a plan in place and creating those ministry opportunities, this is a great way. Duplicate records are a great way to do it. So if I could just kind of shift, if you left with one thing today, and that was a shifted focus on the idea of duplicate records, I will have felt like I did my job.
All right. Well, as we begin to draw this to a close, to get to your question and answers, I want to just take a second. Lindsay asked, what are your guys' thoughts on deleting people or orgs from the database if they have not been in use for a couple of years due to inactivity or whatever? And she gave an example. Looking quickly at our database, we have someone who's not involved in the church currently, and the last attendance record is from 2018. Would you delete or keep? I'm going to answer this in the following way. I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you just a story of a church that said, hey, we're gonna go ahead and purge a bunch of data out of our database. So however old it is, we're going to draw a line in the sand, and we're going to say we're going to delete these people and these orgs. And I really cautioned them for this ministry reason. Data, that data that you have in your database, that equals a person or people. And those people equal stories. All right. And those stories are important to them. And at one time, those stories were very important to your church, even if they went away. And those stories represent a life change. So why would you want to lose that? So if for instance, if Andrew, who's a deacon at the church and he's well connected, and I'm just using Andrew as an example. If Andrew was gung-ho for Jesus for years and years and years and then left the church for whatever reason and basically lived the life of the devil for 5 years, and something happens, he has a Damascus Road experience, he comes back to the church, and that church has recently changed databases or decided to purge data. They don't know Andrew's story because he's been deleted. They can't look back at those orgs that he was a part of or those groups that he was a part of over his time at the church because they were deleted. Now, your system should have a way for you to inactivate orgs, to inactivate people. We have a church in New York City that has 9,000 active members of their church, but they have 250,000 records in their database because they refuse to delete anyone. New York City, very transient. People come and go. They're there for a few years or a few months and they move on and do something else with their life. But if they come back, that church in New York is going to know those people. So to answer your question, Lindsay, I would highly discourage that in a loving way. And just say there is a better way because, again, those people mean something to the Lord, and your staff having those stories and having those connection points, whatever that may be. They used to go to this class, they gave their life to Christ in 1998. All of those things are very, very important should they ever come back. That's my personal opinion, okay? Take it or leave it. That's just my personal opinion. So let's talk about what we've discussed today, what we've learned, what we're going to challenge ourselves with as we go forward, and then we'll get into questions and answers. So we want to move full speed ahead and create standards for data input. All right, we want to have a plan. If you haven't read the SMART tools, or if you want to do a webinar on SMART processes, we'd be glad to do it. I think we might have just done that. But there is a way to create plans. Okay. Again, you want to stress the ministry opportunities to your staff. All right, every staff member at the church loves to minister. That's what they're called to do. That's why they're doing what they're doing. Otherwise, they would be doing something else. So when you as a database admin or as a staff member of the church can encourage ministry through data, it's going to just explode within the church when they see the possibilities of what's possible. All right, we've given you some great tools on auditing your database. We hope that you can pull up whatever system it is that you have, find the search or find the quick report, and just start digging, right? Do a little self-assessment, give yourself a grade. How am I doing? I saw one person way back at the top of the question, Emily, said that she has 23,649 just addeds. And so maybe, you know, grade yourself. How you feel about that? Emily, how's that match up to the total number of people in your database, right? You know, duplicate searches. We showed you how to do that. We can get into more depth on that also. But the most important thing is just make a plan. All right, get that plan to be bought in by the people that are over you, by the people that are responsible for your time and how you spend your day. Express to them, send them this video so that they will see really how important it is and how it really aids in the ministry and discipleship of your people, so that the church can continue to grow. All right. Oh, perfect. If you would love to learn more about Touchpoint, I would love to show you. So here's a link to my calendar. All right. If you are a current client also, and you want, you know, you say, you know what, I could probably use a tune-up, or I could probably use some time with Andrew. If you go ahead and just use that link, granted, I should have thought about this and put Andrew's link in there also. If it doesn't work with Andrew's calendar, I will move it to a time that does, but feel free to use that link. I don't want to give you a bunch of ways to get in touch with us. You just go ahead and use that. Tell me what you want inside the calendar invite, and I will get you to either Andrew or I to either give you the database tune-up, help you with, you know, some of this work that he's been doing with other churches, or if you're not a Touchpoint partner church and you would like to learn more, then I would certainly be honored to show you our system in totality, and we'll have a good time regardless. We'll make friends. All right.
Absolutely. All right. So we have had questions coming in throughout the presentation today. So Brian and I are going to kind of tag team here and work our way through these. I do want to note that there are several of these that are fairly touch point specific. And so, you know, if we don't address it today, I promise, we will, we do get a transcript of those questions. We will follow up with each one of you. But for the sake of time and for the sake of those on the call today who are not Touchpoint customers, Touchpoint partners just yet, we'll defer those and maybe start an email conversation, something like that. Where I'd like to start is actually, Brian just mentioned this a moment ago, Emily, and if I mispronounced your last name, I'm so sorry. Wance, I believe. She says that she has 23,649 just added. What I would kind of say to you is there's no shame in kind of starting fresh, doing a mass update, moving all those. In all likelihood, 99% of those are not members. So just move those over to not members. And then with that last 1%, kind of take the time to seek those out and make sure that they get moved over to a true membership status. But everyone else, go ahead, move them over to not member, just so you get that just added cleared out. And then it is a new day, and you can start with fresh processes and be tracking those. Someone asked a question that kind of goes hand in hand with that is, you know, what updates do we get? And again, this is a bit Touchpoint specific, but I believe this is true for the majority of the industry. You should be getting updates especially within Touchpoint. I know for a fact that when a new record is created, the new people manager gets notification of the new record. When someone makes an update, whether it be from within the app, within the database itself, within a browser, all that information, anytime it is changed, it's going to send the new people manager an update with just notification, hey, this person changed the record. Here's the field that they changed. Here's what it was. Here's what it now is. If you click on that name, you can go to their system tab and you can actually revert that change to remove that change if it's something that you don't need. All right.
Are there any other on here, Andrew, that are not Touchpoint specific that we could answer, and then we can get back to our partners?
Yeah, let's see here.
Like Dale and Becky, we'd love to add. Becky says she would love to see a smart process webinar. I would love to do that as well. Andrew has a very, very good session that we actually had if you were at the summit. If you want to get a start on it, if you were a part of our Touchpoint Summit in September, and you have access to your app still in your resources tab, you can watch that video. So just Becky, if you want to jump to it quicker, it was a fantastic session. But yeah, we will keep that for future consideration for a webinar for the masses.
Another question from Becky that I actually think is widely applicable is, do you have recommendations for entry point? Now, I know within Touchpoint, that's actually a field that you can set so that when a record is created, it is automatically embedded onto that record. But even if your system doesn't work like that, you still probably have the ability to kind of add a substatus or add some sort of a flag to an individual record that indicates how they got in. And so Becky asked, do we have any recommendations on what those entry points should be? So my recommendation would be to not make them so broad that it doesn't give you good information, but have an entry point for special events. And then if you even wanted to go a little bit further, special events by ministry, so special events for senior adults, special event for youth, so on and so forth. That could pertain to camp or whatever it is. That way you're not cluttering up your database with tons and tons of different entry points. That makes it harder for people to choose from as they're building out their registrations. But yeah, so having one for special events, one for giving, just general giving, and then attendance, kind of the same concept. Are they attending a one-off event, or are they attending for the first time a life group or something that's going to be an ongoing attendance for them?
And that really gives your church a way for senior leadership to really monitor and navigate through, how is our church growing, right? Church boards want to know that. How is our church growing? Are our outreach is working? If we have a big citywide initiative and we did something to kind of capture information on that, how did that go? So more importantly than just saying, yeah, it was good. We did this, we did that, whatever, but we got 50 new records through this event, and here's how they came in. It just gives you a little bit more comprehensive finger on the pulse. So you don't just hear the heartbeat, you can actually go in and see, that EKG movement of what's really working and sometimes what's not, right? Not everything we do works. From experience, I'm telling you from experience.
All right, so we do have a few questions out there, but they're very Touchpoint centric. So we're going to defer those. I promise that Brian and I will be following up on that. We'll divvy those up and get back to each one of you. But we have just a few moments left. Any final questions? All right. So I think the questions have slowed down. Well, I hope today has been really helpful for everyone on the call. Our charge to you is to put together some processes to get things cleaned up first, and then moving forward, how are you going to take care of that database, have the ongoing maintenance, so that all teams are kind of on the same page. I think a lot of that, so much of that is just communication between the teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, for being on the call today. We care about the health and growth of your church and the data that's associated with it that drives discipleship. We're excited to be on this journey with you, regardless if you are a current church or not. We just know that every church is trying to reach the same goal with the loving message of the gospel, and we just want you to know how proud we are of you for that. And we pray for you. And if there's anything we can do for you, please let us know. We're here for you.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.